Welcome back. Rich Gallagher is one of the nation's leading experts on workplace communications, a former customer service executive and practicing psychotherapist. His 9 books include the national customer service bestseller, What to Say to a Porcupine, How to Tell Anyone Anything. Of course, his latest book is called The Customer Service Survival Kit, What to Say to Disputes, Even the Worst Customer Situation. Rich has been featured on CNN, Business Week, Dale Carnegie Training, Morning Drive Radio, and numerous other media outlets. His firm Point of Contact Group has trained over 25,000 people on what to say in difficult customer and workplace situations. Rich, welcome to the show.
Hi, Barry. Great to be with you.
Now I know why you're so successful in customer service, because you were a psychotherapist.
That's right.
Is that a prerequisite?
I actually think the best way to learn how to be good in difficult customer situations is to go to graduate school for 3.5 years and become a trained therapist.
Exactly. So, I always, I'm very passionate about customer service, and I always say that customer service now is the new marketing because it's going on the internet and social media. But what is important about handling the absolute worst customer situations?
Barry, I discovered something amazing when I ran customer contact operations, which is bad service isn't created by rudeness or indifference. It's created by fear.
Yeah.
People approach customers from a defensive posture because they're worried about twisting in the wind when a customer goes off on them, even though statistically it only happens, in my experience, maybe a fraction of 1% of the time. So I dramatically turned around the performance of customer contact operations by teaching the same kind of skills that hostage negotiators and crisis counselors and psychotherapists use in their worst situations.
All right, so tell us about that, because I really, I think that the people, especially at the airlines, they're like the worst at this, right?
Yeah.
Because sometimes you get some really, really bad customer service situations there. So what can they learn from, as you said, hostage negotiators?
Well, it's interesting. Really, the point where I started is the point that you and I share in common. I was looking at your book, BAM, again recently, and one of your points is people aren't trained to give good service, and
right.
Almost all the skills in my new book revolve around techniques that go against human nature that nobody knows and nobody would use unless they are taught them. So here's one example. Let's say a customer is criticizing you. Most of us, by human nature, are going to minimize the situation, or we're going to try to defend ourselves. But in reality, if you use what I call leaning into criticism, which is to sit with the emotion of the customer. So if somebody says, I hate your product, say, wow, absolutely, that was really inconvenient to you. You must be furious. This is a technique that I learned when I was studying to be a therapist, because they have an exercise where they criticize your therapy work, and then you respond with as much gusto as you can.
Right. No, I think that's really an excellent point. So basically, you empathize with them, and that's really what a lot of people in bad customer service experience, they want to know, yeah, I understand you're having a difficult situation. And I think that's why, especially in the airline industry, it's so difficult to get such low marks, because they're like, well, nothing's wrong, even though you're delayed 5 hours.
Exactly correct. And we're not taught the mechanics of how to deliver bad news safely to people.
Yeah. So let's go to the next step. Let's say that the customer is criticizing you, especially let's say you're wrong. What should the next step be?
If you're wrong, and this is an important point, taking complete ownership of the situation is very important. Again, we tend to work from a defensive posture, and Barry, I mean this in the nicest possible way, but most people do not know how to acknowledge another person. They'll dissolve into catchphrases like, I understand. There's mechanics to this. If you observe what they're thinking and feeling, or if you validate those feelings by saying, I think you have a right to feel that way. Everyone hates that. We're best if all of you identify with it and say, I'd feel that way too in a situation like that. Those are thoughtfully composed performances that move the needle and calm people down.
Now, I believe, Rich, the reason people don't do that is they feel like they're going to get blamed later, or, there's a very litigious society. What do you say to that?
You hit the nail on the head, because, in fact, at a deeper level, the reason that people don't use these skills is because they feel like they're dancing dangerously close to agreeing with the other person, when, in fact, you're not. You can safely and non-litigiously acknowledge and empathize with people till the cows come home. And what it does is it lowers the heat and moves you more quickly into problem solving.
I thought it was really interesting. I was at the car dealership the other day, and I was in the waiting room, and a woman comes over, sits down with another customer there and says, listen, I feel really bad. I've got really bad news. We ordered this part, and something we put on your car, and darn, it just doesn't work. I feel horrible about that you came in, blah, blah. And I thought she did a wonderful job of really diffusing the situation.
That's awesome because she took complete ownership. You know, that
Right.
reminds me of another example where I called up the phone company and their computers were down. Instead of defending it, they said, "We're the phone company. We should have your phone records, but we don't because our computers are down. I feel terrible about it." And all I could do is laugh.
Yeah, exactly. That's the first time that ever happened. So what do you do when you come across customer service folks where they're just trying to intimidate you, right? Hey, listen, just sit down and shut up.
You know, that's interesting because, you know, most difficult customer situations are caused by people that are like you and me. We feel wronged by something and then we react emotionally to that. And so if you acknowledge them, if you hear them, if you empathize with them, that helps. There are other people that you're talking about here who intimidation is a negotiating style for them. And there you then turn the corner to what we call non-reactivity. This really circles back to the granddaddy of all self-help books. When I say no, I feel guilty by Manuel Smith. He talks about a technique called fogging, which is if you throw bricks at a fog bank and the fog bank doesn't respond, then you're going to give up throwing bricks after a while.
Right.
So you acknowledge them. You say, I know you want the moon and the stars. I can see why you feel much better with that. I can give you half the moon and a quarter of a star. And if you keep calmly repeating yourself, and if you acknowledge their position but stick to your boundaries, if you do this 3 times, normally they'll give up and go away.
I love that. Well, Rich, I love what you write about. You know I'm very passionate about it. Where can you get your new book called The Customer Service Survival Kit?
We have a big launch campaign coming up on March 27th, and so you can check out customerservicesurvivalkit.com. There's a whole bunch of free gifts, including yours, and a good time's going to be had by all.
Rich, thanks so much for being on the show, and have a good weekend.
You too.